So I would just like to thank you all for attending. Tonight I will take some time to discuss the Tenement Tiles online archive, the community stories, and why I feel this project and projects like this have become so important. My name is Zan Phee, and I run the Tenement Tiles online archive. A lot of people don't know what my face looks like, so you're a select few. I generally hide behind our content, and we very rarely discuss that isn't content. So the project itself was born about 7 years ago today. It's our 7th anniversary on Wednesday. I moved back to the south side of Glasgow, a bustling, culturally diverse area with an eclectic mash of modern and traditional architecture, very similar to most sort of cities across Europe. I would take myself for daily walks just to get reacquainted with the area after 7 years of living in the city's East End. I took time to discover that in amongst the many rows of traditional tenement buildings I would pass were even more varied styles of tile that you could see from the street. What started as a few tile snaps to my Twitter page over time has become an amazing community of enthusiasts archiving original tiles, stained glass, iron and woodwork, all wanting to share in this history-soaked space called a wally close. Now this is where I go a little off script and I'll explain what a wally close is. So tenements, which you can find all over the world, sort of traditional sort of domestic buildings. What makes a wally close is it is tiled. Most tenements within sort of Scotland were traditionally tiled with various styles and various levels of quality of tile, depending on the area or how much money was spent. And wally is a term that comes from an old Scottish word called wallow, which meant hollow. And ceramics, like ceramic statues back in the day, were like quite popular. So we had things called a wally dug. I'm sorry if the Scottish accent is going to cause issues here. So a wally dug basically means a wally dog, which is a ceramic dog, which would be a hollow ceramic statue that you'd put on your fireplace that was decorative. And from there, through the evolution of language, anything that was ceramic would start being referred to as wally. And then, again, through a passage of time, tenement stairwell spaces were referred to as wally closes, and that's never gone away. Hundreds of years later, we still refer to it as a wally close. So today, I will share a number of photographs and some video of buildings that I've come across over the past 7 years and discuss how our community and the members of the general public have engaged with the project over that time. This will explore a more personal take on the project than I have previously shared online. And at the end, I will happily answer any questions about the project. But for now, you just sit back and enjoy this short video.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. I'm not sure if you've got any audio from that. I should have maybe checked that just beforehand, so apologies. So that was my first attempt at video content for the project. Up until that point, it had mainly been me snapping photographs on my old iPhone. I like to try and keep the content fresh after 7 years of images, and at one point I attempted 3D virtual tours, which I mean, I'll probably go back to, but it wasn't particularly successful in my first attempt. There's something about the sounds within a tenement space that images and sort of 3D imaging never really reflected in quite the same way as video. This close, seen in the previous clip, and in these images. 2 seconds, sorry. Hang on, we've skipped a few. Avert your eyes. There we are. Previous clip and images now in front of you has a story attached, as will each of the slides you will see this evening. So, this particular tenement I came across on one of my regular tenement hunts for content. I was peering through the doorway and a gentleman appeared by my side. He asked if I lived in the tenement and I responded by saying no, but I was still trying to gain access. I tend to find myself explaining why I'm lurking in sort of private stairwells quite often, but luckily having 1,000 photographs of these spaces in my phone to show people generally explains quite quickly. We were chatting in the doorway, we were chatting, and a resident was exiting, and he allowed us into the close. And while we were in the close, the stairwell, he explained that he'd been visiting from France, where he lived for many years with his wife, but she had sadly passed away the year previous, and this was his first time back home since then. And he was planning on visiting areas that he'd grown up in. He explained that when he was younger, he'd actually lived in this particular close. And as we were walking around, he shared stories of how he was part of one of the younger families within the close and would regularly get pulled into helping clean up the space. Sort of cleaning the stairwell was like a sort of scheduled thing. Sometimes for most people living in the tenement, it would be the only time they would interact with some of their neighbours. For others, living in a tenement is a really tight-knit community, but everybody had to take their turn cleaning the stairs. He would usually do it and get extra pocket money because children obviously need incentives. He explained that the flat that he'd lived in, which was the ground floor flat, used to have a beautiful stained glass door, which sadly was no longer there. He spoke fondly of living in tenements and said that after staying in France for over a decade, it was a very different way of living. He was pleased to discover that our project existed and that there was a genuine interest in not only the architectural history of these buildings, but the social commentary from previous and current residents. These are the stories that make this project for me. So we're just going to hopefully slide into the next slide. 2 seconds. There we are. So what we see here are a couple of screen grabs, and I will piece together the story for you momentarily. So I was contacted by some members of our community regarding the removal of Mosaic tiles from a Glasgow High Street shopfront. This was back in 2018. The project was only a couple of years old at that point. They explained that property developers had been in and removed these Mosaic tiles from the doorstep of a listed building. The perpetrators, city property, instructed contractors to remove this 115-year-old mosaic from the shopfront of the property in Glasgow's East End and replace them with concrete, because progress, right? A decision was made, a decision that left members of the public upset. Local residents reported drilling of these listed entrances without prior warning, with the original mosaics condemned to a skip before being completely replaced by concrete. So, as I said, by 2018, the archive had only been around for about 3 years, but I had actually taken images of these tiles and the mosaics in situ. I shared the images and the news of the removal on our social media. People were understandably upset. Lindsay Lenny of Historic Shop Conservation here in the UK was quoted by the Glasgow Evening Times saying, "If a building is listed, the entire building is listed, including interior, shopfront and any mosaic entrances. Consent is needed if alteration will affect the character. There are rules in place to allow a public discussion regarding the alteration or removal of items such as this. After some back and forth between Glasgow's High Street Merchant Association, Glasgow City Council and the property developers in question, it was decided to reinstate those mosaics. Obviously, it's not the best outcome. Ideally, the best outcome was they'd never been ripped out in the first place. But, progress is, as I previously said. To do this, Glasgow City Heritage put together a series of workshops involving Darren McLean, who is an experienced conservator and teacher of traditional skills. The plan was to encourage members of the public to help recreate the removed mosaics. They asked those interested to join Darren during 3 days to take part in the restoration. So you can see on the screen there, that was them advertising the event. I, having a keen interest in a few aspects of this workshop, I popped by. I noticed that the image being used to recreate the lost step was one that I had previously shared on social media. I was elated to have helped in some small way, but then the realisation hit. I'd been running the project for 3 years, and not once had I thought that the images taken may well be the only captured example of these features in situ. I had just been doing it for fun. Encouraging myself to sort of go for walks, practicing my photography skills, all that. But from that moment on, I decided that if I ever gained access to space, no matter how personally uninteresting I felt it was, I would document any and all aspects I could find, because who knows, it might be the last time it was photographed. Since I've started this project, there are at least, within Glasgow, that I'm aware of, at least 3 buildings where the details that I've photographed no longer exist. And that in itself, the project's only been going for 7 years, and these are listed buildings that have sort of been left to either collapse or we've had fires, that kind of thing. And so this is one of the reasons why I feel like projects like ours and sort of many of the projects that are taking part in this festival and sort of archiving historic buildings in general are so important, because it is part of our sort of living history. So on to the next slide, ideally if this behaves itself. Oh, here we are. So this is us back in the south side of Glasgow. I want to present this example from the area known as Shawlands. As usual with tile hunts, the fact that the door was open was what first drew me in. I can't turn down any opportunity to archive the rarely seen. It's becoming a pretty unhealthy addiction, if I'm honest. I have a habit of wandering away from conversations mid-sentence, consumed by purpose. As you can see here, and in this slide, these are extremely well-preserved tube-lined tiles. Found in a row of tenements, found in a single row of tenements. Design-wise, they seem to follow through on a theme, while still allowing a sense of individuality for each entrance. I've been asked on a number of occasions if there are reasons for certain tenements to have such elaborate tiles, as you can see here, where some have plain or no tiles at all. Over the 6 years talking with many experts on the subject, I still have no solid answers, sorry. What we do know is a large majority of Glasgow's tenements were built by landowners and the wealthy at the time, with an influx of, from the 1840s to the 1920s, there was a massive influx of families heading to Glasgow for work, and affordable living was needed to the workers nearby. A general theory is that the style of tile itself within the tenement close would often reflect nearby businesses and factories. So you'll find many examples of nautical and wheat-themed tiles signifying the ship and baking industries, which we were great exports for. But why choose fancy tiles, stained glass, or extravagant staircases at all? Well, elaborate entrances complied well. So if you had a super wally close, which is a term that we would use for the ones that you can see here, more people would want to live and work in the area. Another reason, and this one is generally accepted as fact, is tiles are easy to keep clean. Almost all tenements were open with no security door, meaning that anyone and everything had access to the stairwell. Children playing away from the rain, mice from the back garden, drunkards using it as an impromptu bathroom. All these things caused an unclean space, which, if not tidied regularly, could go on to cause illness. The nicer the wall close, the more pride the residents took in keeping it presentable and clean. The cleaner the area, the less likely an illness would have you off work, or in work, spreading illness amongst your fellow workers. Please enjoy this clip as we take a tour around one of these gorgeous tube-lined tenements. Hopefully the audio will behave itself this time. There, where I'm not 100% sure it's actually. I've got a sort of view of what's being sent out to you guys. I'm not sure these videos are actually coming out too clear, so apologies. I'll see if I can do something at my end. Okay, so on to the next slide. Since the project began, I've reached out to a number of extraordinary projects the globe over. Social media has a great calling of the tribes effect. Find something you love and you will find others that love it too. There are amateur archives the world over looking to document the humble tile and the artistic details of domestic architecture. Connecting to these projects has been an important step to our archive's evolution. Opening the discussion of preservation on such a large scale is very exciting. Learning, engaging and sharing each project adds a new dimension to what it is we do. Adding to a global audience and using our platform to show other inspiring projects is very important to me, which is one of the very reasons I love taking part in festivals such as this, and of course International Tile Day, which takes place on the 15th of July each year, a day of online events, in-person workshops and project collaboration across the globe. From the very start, Tenement Tiles was to be an online space for those with even the slightest interest in our historic built environment. To have a gateway into the topic. No technical terms or exclusionary language were to be used. I want all people from any background to feel included just by learning to appreciate these small details. This next slide is an example of the fun a world of tile enthusiasts can conjure. Pause that there. So, the tile to the left of your screen was captured as part of our long-awaited real-world exhibition. The exhibition itself contains a series of images from Glasgow's four corners, illustrating the array of different conditions we currently find in the shared space of the stairwell. You're currently actually able to catch the exhibition at the Glasgow Gallery of Photography, running until the 2nd of July. So if you're in the area, feel free to pop by. This particular image is from the West End selection and shows a slightly paint-dripped vibrant tile depicting what I first thought was a pea pod. Now, just looking at the green one, just the middle bit there, it definitely looks like a pea pod, but obviously I was proven incorrect very quickly. While editing the exhibition images, I came across an Instagram post seen on the top right there. It was a post from Jennifer Lim of the Singapore Heritage Tile Project, who you'll be hearing from later this evening. Jennifer runs a project archiving the amazing tiles found at Bukit Brown Cemetery and beyond. The post you see here is a detail from a local tea shop from downtown Singapore. As soon as I saw it, I called snap. It was my first international tile crossover. I was excited and shared it amongst our community. People got excited and began researching, trying to find the tile's origins. During this time, I received another message regarding a tiled piece, this time from the States, a vintage washstand. You can see this just in the bottom corner there. It contained the same tile, but a colour variant. So this is the point where I started questioning whether it was a pea pod, although I'm still not sure why a pea pod would be on a tile, but I'm still pretty sure it definitely is a pea pod, and that's just pink peas. That could be a thing. So the excitement rose. It felt like an investigation. After some time, one of our community shared a link to an online tile catalogue, and it was the same design. We finally discovered the distributor's name. It was from T.R. Boot, created circa 1905. Again, I shared this with the community, and the case was closed. It's very rare to know any details about tiles in situ, as if there are any brand details, they're usually cemented to a wall. I recently found myself drawn to cracked and missing tiles, hoping to get a peek at the reverse or an imprint on the remaining cement. Jennifer Lim, who's become a bit of an international tile twin with me, if she's watching this, she will be laughing, has suggested that she's a little luckier than I am when it comes to tracking down these details, as most of the tiles are attached to tombs that have laid to rest dates, which helps confine the sort of search criteria just a little bit. It's amazing to think of the different journeys each of these examples shown here have taken to get to their destination. A tea house in Singapore, a Wally Close in Glasgow, and a washstand in the States. If they could only talk, they'd probably do a better story than me. So, finally, I want to take you to it's a wee video of one of my favourite tile places in Glasgow. It's currently known as the Cup Tea Rooms, but originally when it was built, it was to house the Bank of India within Glasgow city centre. When it was taken over by its current owners, the entire space was behind plasterboard. And when they started renovating, they discovered this. You will see it in a minute. It's absolutely stunning space, and they make tea, so there's definite reasons to be popping along. So obviously during renovations, they decided to save and restore this amazing space to its former glory. So I'll just let you have a little peek at that. 2 seconds. And you literally just got a wee peek right here, Matt. I would just like to say if for whatever reason these videos aren't streaming correctly, I will be posting them onto our page individually if you want to check out some of the spaces that we've managed to cover. So I just would like to take a wee minute just to say that this project and the community mean a great deal to me, so much so that I've dedicated 7 years of my free time to collecting images and content on an unpaid basis. In all honesty, it's the community that keeps me going. Their outpouring of stories and sense of excitement keep this project alive. I feel that at its core, many of the projects taking part in this festival and festivals like it are driven by our continued appreciation of the rarely seen aspects of a historic built environment and the amazing communities, that's you guys, that surround it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask you some small questions to your work, if you're ready for it.
Of course. Well, it depends on the question, but I'll try my darndest.
So, my first question is, Do you have any sort of idea what do you want to do with the archive of your tiles? Is it just an archiving, or do you have already further projects recording the tiles you collected so far?
So at the moment, as I said a wee bit earlier, we've got an exhibition that's currently running. That was kind of long time coming. Originally started pre-COVID, and then sort of existed a little bit during COVID, and then basically existed in a box next to my bed for about 2 years. And then we were super lucky to get into a venue with the National Trust of Scotland, known as Tenement House, with Tenement Tiles. It's just, perfect marriage. Yeah. And we were in there for about 2 months, I believe, and the feedback was really good. And the main thing about the exhibition for me was, because the project has existed online pretty much exclusively, I wanted to be able to reach people who maybe aren't particularly tech savvy. Yeah. And I feel like real world events, like your gallery spaces and things that you guys are doing as part of the festival, really make a big difference for including people, because, as I said earlier, the stories attached to these spaces are just as important to me as the actual the items that conjure these memories. So being able to go to a gallery space and have someone who lived in tenements, 80 years, and have moved around the whole of Scotland and can tell me different stories about different aspects of things. Yeah. I feel like the real world, the internet's amazing. Obviously, it makes things like this possible, but I feel like real world events, there's that connection, and I feel like, especially since COVID and sort of everything being online and everything being sort of detached. Yeah. I feel like these spaces are a wee bit, they appear to be a bit more important. So the exhibition was like a big thing for the project and for myself, because I've never done anything like that. Yeah. And the community's been exceptional. But hopefully, we're working with a company called Jewel Design, who make these stunning prints, and for some reason they're working with me in the project. And so we've been doing a selection of prints with them. We do like limited run prints, and the aim is all the money that's made from that will go towards making a book. So that's the end game. Yeah. Because again, a book is another real world thing where if you're not necessarily tech savvy, or you're a little bit suspicious of Facebook and sort of having so much information online, yeah. You can have a real world tangible thing. Yeah. And I feel like that sort of gets you a bit of a better reach for people. Definitely.
And do you see like that you actually could benefit more, like even through the book, that you could benefit, that more people could benefit from the Tenement Tiles as a design inspiration, but also as a living cultural heritage?
I do. I feel that it's sort of like I hate to sound like a marketing person, but like it is a different market. You've got a different sort of group of people that you're dealing with. Tenements have been around for like 100+ years. Yeah. The ones that are still standing. There's masses of sort of Glasgow history. There was areas of Glasgow which were basically deemed as slums. Yeah. That was tenements, and swathes of them were destroyed. But this is a living history of some people. Luckily, I'm so youthful. It was before my time. But having these conversations with people and sort of like I mentioned about sort of cleaning the stairwell, there was like a sense of pride from that you don't really get these days. Yeah. Like you hire someone to come in and clean the stairwell, and it's not, you don't have that sort of connection where you've put something into these spaces. Exactly. But there's, again, like I said, people in living history who that's what they did. That's how they earned their pocket money. Yeah. pocket money. That's
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just checking in case I'm using
Yeah.
colloquialisms that make no sense. But yeah, but the it's the same as like a park or you know, a primary school. People have like emotional attachments to them and memories attached to these spaces. But when it comes to tenements, because you can literally get one tenement next to another tenement, and the design is completely different. Like the stairwells are completely different. The sort of you can see whether there's investment from the community within those tenements. So keeping it clean, having like, you know, little plant displays is something that people tend to do. So it's sort of leaking a little bit of their personality out into the shared space, and it being welcomed is it's just a really nice thing to see. And I feel like what started as just me taking pictures of pretty tiles has become more a sort of document of how these shared spaces are used. And again, 100 years from now, it might be used in a very different way. Just compared to how it used to be used. Because like I said, there used to not be security doors on these buildings. So people could just come and go, walk into the back garden, you know, wouldn't need to even live in the area. Where now, obviously, security is a little bit more of a priority. So there's these doors, and that's another thing that sort of, there's a whole conversation about. The doors came afterwards, and the placement of the door, sometimes they've clearly destroyed like a whole section of these tiles that the craftsmanship you don't get these days. I mean, I'm sorry, that's a wide broom there. I didn't mean it like that, but I just mean it's not quite as standard. The quality of the sort of craftsmanship, and I'll post pictures, and people will refer to it as works of art. And these artists have no name; they are just the tiler, and that's a whole other thing as well. Like, should this have been documented? Do these people have ever got credit for the work that they did? You're an artist yourself. Like, to have invested that amount of time into something and then it just to disappear into sort of the annals of history, it's sort of sad.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's really important, your work you're doing, to actually preserve the heritage, but also to document it for further generations, because as you say, a lot of things happen, like renovations or changement in the using of a tenement. And to have this, you already told us that in the presentation, that you already came across situations where the objects you photographed, the tiles or the floors, they're already gone, you know. So do you think that your work also benefits to the fact that it is given more visibility to these kind of tiles or artwork?
Well, I have to say, I was sort of stepping into a pre-existing community of sort of historians, again, sort of social media based. Glasgow is very proud of its history, and especially kind of working class history. We love an underdog. It's like very much a sort of, you know, power to the underdog. So when I was stepping into the project, people started sort of promoting the tenement tiles, and I was kind of shocked because you know, the project had only been up for maybe a couple of months, and some of these sort of like historic influencers who have thousands upon thousands of following would just start sharing our stuff because they were welcoming something that hadn't really been in there before. There's a few projects have come and gone that have archived certain areas of tenements, or have had like a dedicated project where it was based around a certain like row or block of tenements. And they've always been really well received. But obviously, before I started the project, I did a research online because I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. I'm not great with conflict, so I thought I'd best check just in case. But there wasn't really anything like that. And as I said in the presentation, there's a sort of calling of the tribes where if you have something that you genuinely love and you are willing to share it, and other people go, oh no, I like that too, and I have someone to share this with.
Mm-hmm.
They will come and they will go, look at this
Exactly.
amazing thing that's similar to what you like. And that started off as like, you know, just Glasgow, and then Scotland, and then moved on to Europe. And sort of me discover, as I said, like Instagram was something we added a little later, but that was an amazing networking thing where there's so many projects doing similar things across the world, and the core aspect of it is getting people to just appreciate the history that exists now, because it keeps disappearing, and that's a scary thought. Like, people walk past, you know, people live in tenements, they either bought it or they rent they rent a flat or whatever, and they will pass these stairwells and you become oblivious to it for a while. It's that whole looking up or looking down. It's like giving yourself a moment to pay attention to your surroundings.
Exactly.
I feel like COVID, because everybody kind of had to stay within their postcode, and you know, there was a lot kind of staying at home. A lot of people reconnected over that time with tenement living and sort of your neighbours and knowing who you're living near and things like that. And I'm always one for trying to find the silver lining. Obviously, COVID is horrendous, but like that, building a sort of sense of local community after, like I said, everything being online and sort of spread out, people being detached. That was really nice, and I feel like our project kind of lucked out because it tied into those themes round about that time. But I genuinely do feel like projects like the ones that you guys are running and sort of less, I don't like to promote myself, but things like Tenement Tiles and Singapore Heritage, ceramic stories, things like that, who are trying to uncover the history while trying to protect it and trying to sort of get people to understand why it's important to protect it. All of at the core, all of these projects have that, and I think that's why it's so easy to connect with different people. Is again, you have one similar thing, you've got a conversation starter.
And to finalize, I have one last small question. What do you think you need to go further with your projects and with your vision about your Tenement Tiles, and what do you think is important to tell as a message?
At the moment, ideally, I think I mentioned in the project, I've been running this for 7 years, completely unfunded. We have a Ko-fi thing where people donate a couple of pounds. Basically, I'm a bit of a tea Jenny, which means I drink a lot of tea. So when I go out on tile hunts, the community will buy me a cup of tea, or if I'm super lucky, a nice bit of cake. But it adds up after 7 years, you know, traveling expenses, meeting up with people for tea and coffee to discuss partnerships or, you know, the progress of the project. And again, the community's been amazing. But at one point, I will have to find a way to sort of fund this a little bit better. There's lots of funding out there, depending on who you're working with, and sort of what you're promoting. So that's my next step, I think, is to sort of find a way to fund this so that I can take the next step without completely eating into any savings I have left. But again, you must feel that as an artist, like you kind of have to find the balance of budget and progress with what you're doing.
True. Thank you very much, Zan, for your presentation. It was a pleasure to have you here in Lucerne. It was a pleasure to have you live here, and we would like to stay in contact, and we will come back to each other, and we will have a talk soon again. Thank you very much.
That would be lovely, thank you. Good luck with the rest of the festival. I'll be keeping a wee eye online.
Thank you.
I'll be dropping Jennifer a message, just sort of make her laugh as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Thank you. Enjoy your evening.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.